The joke landed the way tired jokes often do, half smiled at, then forgotten. He said it without thinking, standing in a narrow kitchen, coffee already going cold. You could just move in. He meant it as relief, as a way to end an awkward moment. What he didn't see was how carefully she paused, how her eyes stayed on the floor an extra second. By the next morning, the street outside his apartment was different. Too quiet, too clean. A black car sat where his neighbor usually parked. He understood then that some offers sound casual only to the person making them, and that once spoken, certain words don't wait for permission to become real. If you value slow, grounded stories like this, consider staying with the channel. He remembered the moment wrong at first. In his memory, it had been louder, sharper, a clear point, where everything tilted, but the truth was quieter. It happened in the space between two ordinary actions. He had reached for a mug. She had adjusted her coat. The words slipped out as easily as breath. You could just move in. He said it with a small laugh, the kind people use to smooth over discomfort. He didn't look at her when he said it. He was already turning back toward the counter, already assuming it would pass. The kitchen was narrow, built for one person to stand in without touching the other. The light above the sink flickered the way it always did. His daughter's lunchbox sat open on the table, a banana rolling slightly toward the edge when the fridge door closed. She didn't respond right away. That part stayed with him. He rinsed the mug, set it upside down, wiped the counter with the same towel he always used. He filled the lunchbox, zipped it, checked the clock. When he finally looked up, she was still there, hands in her pockets, eyes lowered. Not uncomfortable, not amused. Just still. It's fine, she said eventually. I know what you meant. He nodded too quickly. He said something else then. He never remembered what. Probably an apology shaped like a joke. Probably relief. They left the apartment together, locking the door behind them. In the hallway, he held it open while she stepped through. Their shoulders didn't touch. Nothing about the moment suggested it would matter later. That was how most of his life worked. Moments came and went without ceremony. He built things to last, not to impress. He avoided statements that couldn't be walked back. He didn't invite disruption. And when it arrived anyway, he managed it quietly. By the time he dropped his daughter at school, the comment had already dulled. It joined the long list of things said out of politeness or fatigue, words that belonged to the situation, not the future. The day followed its pattern. He took the bus to work. He answered emails. He ate lunch at his desk, the same sandwich he brought most days. No one asked him questions that mattered. No one looked at him longer than necessary. The world remained appropriately indifferent. That night, he cooked pasta and listened to his daughter talk about a class project he didn't fully understand. He nodded in the right places. He washed the dishes while she did homework at the table. The apartment held him the way it always did, tight but familiar. When she went to bed, he sat on the couch and stared at his phone without picking it up. He thought, briefly, of the pause in the kitchen that morning, of how she had looked at the floor instead of him. It didn't feel like a warning, just a detail. He slept lightly, the way he always did. In the morning, he woke before his alarm. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the radiator. He stood at the window while the coffee brewed, watching the street below wake up. A delivery truck idled. Someone walked a dog. Everything was in its place. Then he noticed the car. It was parked directly across from his building, black and clean in a way that didn't match the street. No scratches tucked under the wiper. The engine was off, but the presence of it felt active, as if it had arrived with intention. He frowned, more curious than concerned. His daughter padded into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. He poured her cereal, cut an apple, handed her the bowl. She ate standing up, leaning against the counter. "Is that a fancy car?" she asked, nodding toward the window. "I guess," he said. He tried to sound casual. He took his mug and stepped closer to the glass. The car didn't belong to any neighbor he knew. It didn't belong to the street at all. A knock came at the door. It wasn't loud. It wasn't rushed. Just 3 even taps. He set the mug down slowly. He told himself it was nothing. A wrong address. A delivery. He wiped his hands on his jeans and walked down the short hallway. When he opened the door, she was standing there, not dressed differently, not smiling, just present, as if this were the next logical step after yesterday. Behind her, the hallway felt smaller. Someone stood further back, out of focus, waiting. "Good morning," she said. "I hope this isn't too early." He didn't answer right away. His daughter appeared behind him, peering around his leg. The words from the day before rose up between them, heavier now, stripped of humor. She waited. He understood then that the problem wasn't that he had spoken. It was that he had been heard. The hallway clock ticked. The apartment held its breath. Nothing had happened yet. But something already had. He stepped aside without deciding to. The movement came first. Thought followed later. He shifted his weight, opened the door wider, and made space the way he always did when someone stood too close. It was a habit formed from years of narrow rooms and shared hallways. You didn't block. You adjusted. "Come in," he said. She nodded once and crossed the threshold. Her shoes stopped just inside the door, careful not to touch the mat. The person behind her stayed in the hallway. The door closed softly. The lock clicked. The apartment looked the same as it had an hour earlier. The couch with the loose leg. The stack of mail on the side table. A framed drawing taped crookedly to the wall. Nothing had been prepared for this moment. Nothing had been hidden. His daughter stood barefoot on the tiles, cereal bowl still in her hands. "This is Ava," he said, the introduction automatic. "My daughter." The girl looked up at the woman and then back at him. She didn't say anything. She rarely did with strangers. He placed a hand lightly on her shoulder, a grounding gesture more for himself than for her. "I remember," the woman said. She knelt slightly, not all the way down, just enough to be closer to the child's height. "Good morning, Ava." Ava nodded once. She took another bite of cereal and leaned harder into his leg. The woman straightened. Her attention returned to him. "I didn't mean to surprise you," she said, "but I had an opening this morning." He absorbed the words slowly. An opening, as if mornings were resources. As if this were scheduling, not intrusion. "I was joking," he said, not defensively, just clearly, yesterday. "I know," she said. "You said that." There was no challenge in her voice. No apology either. Just acknowledgement. He gestured toward the couch. "Do you want to sit?" She shook her head. "I won't stay long." The kitchen light flickered again. Ava's spoon clinked against the bowl. Outside, the street noise continued, unaware. He watched the woman take in the space. Not inspecting, not judging, just noticing. Her eyes moved to the window, the table, the hallway that led to the bedroom. She didn't comment on the size. She didn't ask questions. This was not a place meant to be explained. He had lived here for 4 years, long enough to stop seeing its limits as temporary, long enough to arrange his life around what fit. The apartment held exactly what they needed and no more. He liked it that way. There were fewer decisions, fewer expectations. When Ava finished eating, he rinsed her bowl and set it in the rack. He packed her backpack, checked the folder inside, tied her shoes. These were the things he could do without thinking. These were the things that anchored him. The woman waited, hands folded in front of her, giving him space he hadn't asked for. "We should go," you said to Ava. "Okay," she said. She looked at the woman again. "Are you coming too?" The question hung there. Simple. Unprotected. "No," the woman said. "Not today." Ava considered this. Then she nodded, satisfied. She grabbed her jacket and stood by the door. He reached for his own coat. As he did, he noticed the envelope on the counter. Thick paper. His name typed cleanly across the front. He hadn't seen it before. "What's this?" he asked. "Information," she said. "For later." He didn't touch it. They walked down the stairs together. The hallway guard stepped aside. Outside, the car waited with the engine running now. People passed on the sidewalk without looking. At the school gate, Ava let go of his hand and ran ahead. He watched until she disappeared into the building. When he turned back, the woman was still there, standing near the car. "This doesn't have to be complicated," she said. He studied her face. There was no urgency in it, no pressure he could point to. That was what unsettled him. My life is already full, he said. I can see that, she replied. They stood there a moment longer. Then she got into the car. The door closed. The car pulled away. He remained on the sidewalk until it turned the corner. The rest of the day did not return to normal. At work, his manager asked if everything was all right. A colleague mentioned the car outside his building. Someone else asked the question they hadn't earned. He answered carefully, giving away nothing that could be reused. By evening, the envelope still sat unopened on the counter. He made dinner. He helped with homework. He listened to Ava talk about her day. When she went to bed, he finally picked up the envelope. It was heavier than paper should be. He did not open it yet. He set it down and turned off the light. The apartment was quiet again, but it no longer felt sealed. Something had entered. Not loudly, not by force, just by taking him at his word. He opened the envelope the next morning, not because he wanted to, because leaving it sealed had begun to feel like a decision, and he wasn't ready to make one yet. He stood at the counter, coffee untouched, and slid a finger under the flap. Inside were 3 pages, heavy paper, clean margins, no logos on the first page, just text. The language was precise, neutral. It outlined options without naming them that way. Time frames, expectations, support structures. Nothing that sounded like a promise. Nothing that sounded like a threat. The tone assumed cooperation as the default. He read it twice. The words didn't upset him. That was the problem. They were reasonable. They accounted for disruption. They offered solutions before he could name the problems. This was how she worked. He could see it now. Not by force, but by preparation. By removing friction until the path forward felt smooth. He folded the pages and put them back in the envelope. At the bus stop, he noticed 2 people standing farther back than usual. They weren't obvious. They didn't look at him, but when the bus arrived, they boarded after him and sat where they could see the aisle. He told himself he was imagining it. At work, the separation became clearer. She existed in conversations he wasn't part of, in headlines he didn't read closely, in decisions that moved markets instead of schedules. He had known this abstractly, but abstraction had kept it manageable. Seeing the shape of it in his own day changed things. His manager pulled him aside after lunch. Someone from corporate called, she said. High level. They asked about you. He waited. They didn't say why. Just wanted confirmation of your role, your hours, your flexibility. He smiled in the way people did when they didn't want follow-up questions. And I told them the truth. The truth felt suddenly exposed. His reliability, his limitations, the fact that he never stayed late because he couldn't, that he never traveled because he wouldn't. That night the woman came by again. This time he expected her. She didn't bring anyone. She didn't bring luggage. She stood in the doorway and waited for him to decide whether to open it fully. He did. I don't want this to change things for you, she said. It already has, he replied. They sat at the table. He didn't offer food. She didn't ask. The overhead light buzzed faintly. You made an offer, she said. I treated it as one. I made a joke. She nodded, and I chose to hear the part that mattered. He watched her hands rest on the table, still, unadorned. No rings, no visible signs of status. You have resources I don't, he said. That matters. Yes, she said. It does. The admission landed heavily. He had expected deflection, reassurance. Instead, there was honesty. I can leave, she continued, if that's what you want, but I won't pretend I didn't hear you. Silence settled between them. Ava's door was closed down the hall. The refrigerator clicked on and off. He thought of the envelope, of the way the paper had felt, of how easily the future had been outlined for him by someone else. I don't want to be managed, he said. I don't manage people like you, she replied. I partner with them. The word hung there. Partner. He stood and walked to the window. The street below looked the same. Ordinary. He rested his hand against the glass. When you show up like this, he said, it changes the balance. She joined him at a distance. Balance exists whether we name it or not. He turned back to her. And if I say no, then I adjust, she said. But I won't apologize for responding. He believed her. That, too, unsettled him. Ava's door opened then. She stood in the hallway, hair tousled, holding her stuffed animal. Are you still here? She asked the woman. Yes, the woman said. Ava looked between them. Okay. She went back to her room without another word. The moment passed, but something had been confirmed. The roles were not equal. They never would be. Pretending otherwise would be the real dishonesty. Later, after the woman left, he sat alone at the table. He realized then that power did not announce itself. It waited to see how much room it was given. And he had opened the door. The next morning did not begin with surprise. That was what unsettled him most. He woke before the alarm again, already aware of the weight in his chest. The apartment was quiet, but it no longer felt neutral. It felt expectant, as if something had been set in motion and was now moving without him. He showered, dressed, moved through the kitchen. Ava came out rubbing her eyes, the same as always. He poured cereal. He sliced fruit. He kept his voice steady. Are we late? She asked. No, he said. We're fine. Outside, the car was there again. This time, it was closer to the building. The engine was off. No one sat inside. It looked less like a visitor and more like a fixture. Ava noticed it immediately. Is that the same one? She asked. Yes, he said. Why? He didn't answer. He handed her backpack to her and locked the door. In the hallway, he paused. He listened. No footsteps. No voices. Just the low hum of the building settling around them. He told himself to breathe. He told himself he was still in control. When they reached the street, the woman was standing beside the car. She wasn't dressed formally. No coat. No visible urgency. She looked like someone waiting for a ride, not someone arriving to change a life. Good morning, she said. Ava waved. Hi. The woman returned the wave. Good morning. He stopped a few feet away. He did not invite her closer. He did not move past her. This is moving too fast, he said. She nodded. I expected you to say that. You don't get to expect things from me, he said. I don't, she replied. I prepare for them. He felt something tighten, not anger, recognition. I never said yes, he said. No, she agreed. You didn't. She opened the trunk. Inside was a single suitcase, not large, not small. Used, but well kept. The sight of it shifted something immediately. Words became inadequate. This is not what I meant, he said. I know, she said, but this is what I'm doing. Ava looked at the suitcase, then at him. Is she staying with us? He knelt down so they were level. He chose his words carefully. No one is staying yet. The woman did not contradict him. She waited. I won't bring anything inside without your permission, she said, but I needed you to see that I was serious. I don't want serious, he said. I want stable. Sometimes they look the same from the outside, she replied. He stood. The street felt narrower than it had yesterday. A man walked past and glanced at them, then looked again. A neighbor across the way paused with his trash bag. Visibility had arrived. He had not consented to it. This affects my daughter, he said. Yes, she said. That's why I came myself. The answer offered no comfort. They walked to the school together, not side by side, not separate, just near enough that people assumed familiarity. At the gate, Ava stopped and turned to the woman. Are you my dad's friend? She asked. The woman considered the question. I think so. Ava nodded. Okay. She hugged him quickly and ran inside. The woman did not follow. She stood beside him, hands in her pockets. I won't go further without you, she said, but I won't pretend I'm not here. He watched the school doors close. You've already crossed a line, he said. Yes, she replied, and now you have to tell me if you want me to step back. He felt the weight of the moment settle. This was not a misunderstanding anymore. This was a choice, arriving early and demanding attention. Not like this, he said. She accepted that without protest. She closed the trunk. She took the suitcase and placed it back inside the car. I'll wait, she said. For what? He asked. For you to tell me what this actually is. She got into the car and drove away. He stood there longer than necessary. The street returned to its rhythm. Cars passed. People stopped looking. At work, the shift was immediate. A meeting he was never invited to was suddenly rescheduled. A project he had finished weeks ago was reviewed again. His manager avoided his eyes. By the afternoon, he received an email asking him to confirm availability in the event of future changes. He did not reply. That evening, Ava sat at the table coloring. Are you worried? She asked without looking up. Yes, he said. About her? He paused. About us. She nodded, accepting that as sufficient. Later, after Ava was asleep, he sat alone in the dark living room. He understood now that the joke had become literal, not because she misunderstood him, but because she had taken him at his word in a world where words became actions. And the worst part was not that she had shown up. It was that in some quiet place he had expected her to. The car stopped coming every morning, but its absence did not restore anything. That was the first thing he noticed. The street looked normal again. The usual dents in the curb, the same van with the broken mirror. The neighbor who left too early and came home too late. But the quiet he had expected did not return. Something had shifted and stayed that way. At work, people knew. Not all of them, not officially, but enough. Conversations slowed when he entered rooms. A meeting moved to a different floor without explanation. His manager stopped asking about his schedule and started confirming it in writing. You're still good for next quarter? She asked one afternoon, voice careful. Yes, he said. She nodded, but didn't look reassured. The question hadn't been about time. It had been about reliability, about whether his life was about to become unpredictable. He left that day with the sense that something had been noted in a file he would never see. At home, the apartment resisted change in small ways. The couch leg finally gave out and tilted further to one side. A cabinet hinge loosened. The radiator clicked louder than before. Ordinary problems, but they demanded attention now, and his patience felt thinner. Ava noticed. You're quieter, she said one night as he washed dishes. I'm thinking, he replied. About what? Grown-up stuff. She accepted this, but she watched him more closely after that. He felt it when he moved through the room. He felt it when he paused too long at the window. The woman did not disappear. She adjusted. Messages came instead of visits. Short, direct, never more than necessary. She did not push. She did not retreat. She stayed exactly where she said she would, waiting for him to define the terms. That restraint made it harder. If she had insisted, he could have refused. If she had withdrawn completely, he could have let her go. But she remained present without pressure, a condition he could not resolve through force or avoidance. One evening, she asked to meet, not at the apartment, not near the school, somewhere neutral. He chose a cafe near his office. Bright, busy, safe. She arrived alone. She always did now. They sat across from each other, hands wrapped around cups they didn't drink from much. I'm starting to see consequences, he said. She nodded. So am I. My work, he continued. My privacy. My daughter's routine. Yes. You're not surprised, he said. No, she replied. I accounted for them. I just didn't know which ones would matter most to you. That's the problem, he said. You're always accounting. She did not deny it. I don't want my life to become a strategy, he said. It already is, she said gently. You just run it on a smaller scale. The comparison landed harder than she intended. He looked down at the table. Around them, people talked, laughed, made plans that did not require negotiation with power. I didn't invite this, he said. No, she said, but you opened the door. He met her eyes. And you walked through without checking how narrow it was. She considered that. That's fair. Silence settled between them. Not hostile. Just waited. At home that night, Ava sat on the floor assembling a puzzle. He joined her, fitting pieces together without looking at the picture on the box. Do you like her? Ava asked. He paused, holding a piece that didn't fit where he tried to place it. I don't know yet, he said. Ava studied the pieces. She listens. He looked at her. She waits, Ava added. That's different. He placed the piece down. The next day he was called into his manager's office. There may be changes coming, she said. Nothing certain, but it would help to know if you're planning any transitions. No, he said. I'm not. She watched him carefully. Are you sure? Yes, he repeated. She nodded. The meeting ended, but the question lingered. That night, the woman sent one message. I don't want to cost you anything you didn't choose to give. He stared at the phone for a long time. The silence that followed was not empty. It pressed in from all sides, shaped by what had already been seen and could not be unseen. He understood then that consequences were not events, they were conditions, and he was already living inside them. The shift did not arrive as clarity. It came as fatigue. He noticed it first in his body, in how long it took him to get out of bed, in the way his shoulders stayed tense even when nothing was happening. Decisions that used to be automatic now required checking, not because the answers were unclear, but because the consequences had multiplied. He began rehearsing conversations that never happened, with his manager, with the woman, with himself. None of them resolved anything. They only confirmed how narrow the margins had become. At work, he kept his head down. He arrived early and left exactly on time. He volunteered for nothing. He declined small opportunities he might once have considered, not out of fear, but out of containment. If his world was going to be watched, he would make it boring. At home, he fixed the cabinet hinge. He propped the couch leg with folded cardboard. He did the things he could do with his hands. Physical work helped. It didn't solve anything, but it gave his attention somewhere to land. The woman did not ask to see him again. That restraint began to feel heavier than insistence would have. One afternoon, as he waited outside Ava's school, he saw the woman across the street, not approaching, not hiding, just there, leaning against a building, phone in her hand. He felt a flicker of irritation, not because she was there, but because she had found a way to be present without crossing the lines he'd named. She was doing exactly what she said she would do. Ava came out and spotted her immediately. That's her, Ava said. Yes, he replied. Ava waved. The woman waved back, staying where she was. Why doesn't she come over? Ava asked. Because I asked her not to, he said. Ava thought about this. Oh. They walked home. Halfway there, Ava stopped. You said she could move in, Ava said. He felt the words land with unexpected force. Yes, he said carefully. I did. But you didn't mean it, Ava continued. No, he said. I didn't. Ava looked up at him. Her expression was neutral, not accusing. Just curious. Then why did you say it? He searched for an answer that wasn't defensive. He didn't find one quickly. I was trying to be kind, he said finally. Ava nodded. Sometimes kind sounds like yes. She said it without emphasis, without explanation. Then she started walking again. He stood there a moment longer, the truth of it settling in. The line was simple, not clever, not symbolic, just accurate. That night, he invited the woman over. He did not frame it as a discussion. He did not apologize. He asked her to come and talk. She arrived alone. No car this time. She walked. They sat at the table again. The overhead light buzzed. He noticed it now because he was calmer. I understand something better, he said. She waited. I didn't mean to invite you into my life, he said. But I did mean to avoid discomfort. And I used humor to do it. She nodded. I suspected that. That doesn't make it harmless, he continued. It made it confusing. Yes, she said. I don't want my kindness to be interpreted as access, he said, and I don't want to pretend I didn't offer it. She listened without interrupting. I can't give you what you're prepared to receive, he said, and I don't want to live in a space where every word has to be audited. She considered this. Not defensively, not emotionally, just carefully. I don't need permanence, she said. I need honesty. This is honesty, he replied. She nodded once. They sat in silence. Not strained, just final. I will step back, she said. Completely. He felt the weight of that. The relief and the loss arrived together. There will be consequences, she added. Not as punishment, as adjustment. I know, he said. She stood. Then this is where it changes. At the door, she paused. For what it's worth, she said, you didn't mislead me. You just underestimated how seriously I take words. She left. The apartment felt different immediately. Not emptier, quieter, as if something that had been leaning against it had finally moved away. He sat at the table long after. For the first time since the joke, he felt aligned with what he had meant and what he was willing to stand by. The cost was already in motion. The consequences did not wait for permission. They arrived quietly, in ways that were easy to miss if you weren't looking for them. A meeting he had once been included in went ahead without his name on the invite. A project was reassigned to streamline communication. His manager spoke to him with professional warmth and personal distance. He was not reprimanded. He was adjusted. He understood this kind of movement. It was familiar, even if the reason for it was new. Institutions corrected for uncertainty by narrowing options. By reducing exposure, he had introduced risk into a system that preferred predictability, and the system had responded. At home, he felt the contrast more sharply. The apartment was the same size, but it felt deliberately chosen now. He noticed the way the light came in through the window in the late afternoon, how the sound from the street softened as evening approached. These were not features that impressed anyone. They were features that held. Ava adapted quickly. The woman stopped appearing across the street. She stopped waving from a distance. She became someone Ava asked about once, then less than not at all. One evening, as he packed lunches, Ava watched him from the table. Is she gone? Ava asked. Yes, he said. Forever? He paused. I think so. Ava nodded. Okay. She went back to her homework. There was no drama in the acceptance. Just recalibration. Children were good at that when adults were honest. The call came a week later. It wasn't from the woman. It wasn't from work. It was from someone in between. A polite voice. Carefully neutral. Given recent developments, the voice said, we're reviewing certain roles. I understand, he said. This isn't about performance, the voice continued. It's about alignment. He had expected this. Still, his throat tightened. What does that mean? He asked. It means your current position may not grow in the ways previously anticipated. I'm okay with that, he said. There was a pause. The voice had not expected agreement. Then we'll note that, it said. The call ended. That night, he told Ava they wouldn't be going on the trip they had loosely planned for the spring. Nothing expensive. Just something extra. Why not? She asked. Work things, he said. Ava thought about this. Can we still go to the park? Yes, he said. Then that's fine. He smiled, a small one. He did not reach out to the woman. He did not check the news for signs of her. He let the distance stay intact. This was the sacrifice. Not of comfort, but of possibility. Of the version of his life that might have expanded outward, acquired ease and insulation and options he had never needed to imagine. He chose the smaller life, not because it was safer, but because it was his. On a Saturday morning, he fixed the couch leg properly. He replaced the hinge. He cleaned the windows. Ava helped by holding screws and asking questions. The apartment held. Later, they walked to the park. Ava ran ahead. He sat on the bench and watched her climb. Nothing about the moment was remarkable. No one was watching. No one was waiting. And that, he realized, was the point. The street outside his building changed back slowly. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just in small reversions. The black car never returned. The neighbor reclaimed the parking spot. A flyer appeared under a wiper and stayed there for days. The street forgot. He noticed the absence more than the return. Mornings settled into their old rhythm. Coffee, cereal, shoes by the door. Ava talking about something half-formed and important only to her. He listened without checking the time. At work, the path forward narrowed and then stabilized. He was no longer being considered for things he hadn't asked for. His role became exactly what it said it was. There were no follow-up calls, no invitations framed as opportunities. The quiet that replaced them felt deliberate. He accepted it without resentment. The apartment continued to show its age. A scuff on the wall near the door. A crack in the tile that grew slowly. He fixed what needed fixing. He left what didn't. One evening, Ava sat at the table drawing. "Can you help me?" she asked. "In a minute," he said. She waited. When he joined her, she pushed the paper toward him. It was a simple drawing. 3 figures. A building. A sun in the corner. "Who's that?" he asked, pointing. "That's you," she said. "That's me." "And the other one?" She shrugged. "Someone who visited." He nodded. He didn't ask more. Later, after Ava was asleep, he stood at the window again. The street below was empty in the way only familiar places could be. Not abandoned. Just complete. He thought of the morning the car had been there. How the world had looked the same but felt altered. How easily something could enter and rearrange the shape of a life. He did not regret what he had said. He regretted how little he had considered what it would mean if someone listened. In the quiet, he turned off the light and stepped away from the window. The apartment held its shape. Outside, the street remained unchanged. And that was how he knew the decision had settled. Not because something dramatic had followed, but because nothing else arrived to replace it. The space he kept stayed empty, and for the first time since the joke, it felt intentional.